Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be definite date or not. Well, I've got an email here from a guy who unfortunately got stood up the other night on a date. Now, this particular woman that he set a date with is the roommate of the girl a coworker of his is currently seeing. And so he basically sends me their text exchanges, what I'm going to go through with you because he wants to confirm, like, I definitely made a definite date with this girl, right? The only critique I would have for him once I get into it, you could tell that he was pretty angry, pretty pissed off, pretty butthurt. But other than that, I mean, he just made the date 3 days before this. And so but I look at these kinds of events as a good thing, and I'll get to that in a minute as to why it's a good thing. And then I'll go through some things that you can do when you're making a date to make sure that the other person keeps it. So I got a quote that I wrote, and then we'll go through the email. And the quote says, "The world is full of too many average, low-quality humans. High achievers and people who treat their fellow human beings with kindness and mutual respect are extremely rare. Average humans have no self-respect and therefore don't treat others with respect." You may have heard before that you can't give away what you don't have for yourself. They feel entitled to waste the time of others because they themselves waste their lives and their own time. Always pay attention to how people treat you. Do they make and keep plans and actually show up on time for those plans? Are they reliable, dependable, and excited to see you and be a part of your life? Or do they treat you like an afterthought and option to be discarded when someone or something else catches their attention and distracts them? Don't take it personally when people stand you up, take you for granted, waste your time, or demonstrate that they are low quality. Instead, be grateful that they revealed to you early on that they do not belong in your life before you've wasted too much of your valuable time, money, and emotional energy. So I'm going to pull up this guy's email. It's got the different text exchange so I can go through that with you. And I'll read those to you as well. But I mean, if you think about it, you make a date 3 days before, say like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and you're going to meet on a Friday night. I mean, you got to think about it from this perspective. If you made plans to get together with a good friend, somebody that's reliable, dependable, or maybe your parents, or maybe you have a meeting with a client, an important client that you're trying to spend time with. It's all really about interest level. In other words, what is the interest level of the prospect that you're meeting with? If it's a girl for a date, what's her real, true interest in you? People who have high interest in spending time with you will make sure they're there on time. Actually, they'll be a little bit early. And they may even text you just to make sure the day of that they're still on. Now, somebody that has low interest and low respect for you, just like the quote says, because they're just a low quality person, they're not going to really care one way or another. And you'll kind of see that her interest in meeting him is just, she's just kind of Because if you look at, like when I compare now being 51 versus like when I was dating in my 20s, I mean, back then, this was before social media. We had cell phones, I mean, the early big brick phones. We had pagers. And typically, like at least in my own life, when I was going out and doing social things, it wasn't like I was most of the time wasn't meeting somebody. And then 5 minutes later, I had to run to an appointment. We might be at a bar or a friend's party or just hanging out at different friends' houses with their kids or whatever. And so you have plenty of time to talk to and engage with other human beings. And if you're interested in a woman and you meet her at a party, you might talk for a half hour, an hour, and the conversation just flows easy and effortless. So when you have a lot of time to kind of get to know somebody and see if there's a connection there and you like her, she likes you, you're going to get her phone number, obviously her name, and then you'll call her later on to make a date, and you've had time to create that rapport. You're not some random stranger that you met on a dating app and maybe spent 5 minutes on the phone with, or 5 minutes texting back and forth, and made a date for drinks. And so when you meet somebody in person and maybe you're at a trade show or a convention, or you're sitting in an airport waiting for a plane, or you're having a drink in a bar, maybe you're traveling or whatever, and you got time to get to know somebody and create some actual rapport with them. So the more time you spend with them initially when you meet them, you're going to have a much better rapport, and therefore if you make a date and you get their address to go pick them up, they're already kind of familiar with you, versus nowadays with social media, and especially with all the desperate guys out there that have been so brainwashed by society, they have no idea what they're doing. And then you got women on dating apps, women on social media, Instagram, whatever, and all day long they got dudes throwing their dicks at them. And so they have their choice. They have way more abundance than they used to have just 20 years ago. And so you got to take that into consideration, is like, how much rapport do you have with this person? Because the less amount of rapport and the less amount of time you spent up front getting to know them, the higher the likelihood that you may set plans and they flake on you. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind. And the reality is, if conversation doesn't flow when you first meet somebody, it's not going to flow any better on a date. And that's why if you can spend more time talking and chatting with somebody, 15, 20 minutes, to see how the conversation goes, if it never stalls or dies and you actually like what she has to say, chances are when you go out on a date, it'll only get better. But if you're struggling to converse with them in person and it doesn't flow, there's absolutely no reason and no point in getting their number and trying to set a date and assuming that they'll like you more on the date. The idea is you're trying to prevent people from wasting your time. And when you take into account that women, especially younger women in their 20s, have so much attention, all they have to do is get online or put their dating profile up, and they're getting bombarded by attention. You want to make sure that you're making plans with somebody that actually likes you and is actually into you. So with that said, I'm going to start going through his email, and then I'll go through the text exchange. And remember, life should be an asshole-free zone. And unfortunately, there's a lot of assholes in the world, and social media has turned a lot of really attractive women into assholes and tyrants, on top of daddy issues and other problems that they bring to the table. And so you got women being just completely spoiled, and there's no consequences for them. It's like they don't care. They blow you off. There's 10 other dudes that want to go out on a date with them. So you got to keep that in mind. That's why you got to pre-screen women properly up front, whether it's through the phone or spending some time. Just what I always did when I was online dating was I would spend 10 to 15 minutes just talking on the phone and see how the conversation flowed. Does she sound interesting to me? Would I want to sit there for a couple hours and drinks and dinner and listen to her? Would I actually want to hear what she had to say? And if it doesn't flow in the phone, there's no way I would ever meet them in person. It would just be an absolute waste of time. And, again, I wrote about the women that I wrote about in this book were not just average chicks that came along every day. These were once, twice, maybe 3 times a decade kind of women that come along that you really click with, you really jive with, just like your closest friends you're going to jive with instantly. So he says, Dear Coach Corey, I made what I perceived as definite plans to meet up with drinks for the roommate of my coworker's current hookup. 3 days before the date, we agreed upon a day, a time, and location to meet, with the messages ending where he says, I'll see you there, and then she says, can't wait. So he says, seems like a confirmation to me. So the one caveat, and I mentioned this in the book, is that when you're meeting somebody someplace, one of the things I would always say is, hey, if you get there first, get us a table. And if I get there first, I'll get us a table. Because it's just one more thing to confirm. And if you're not sure, another thing you can do on the day of the date, maybe a few hours before, is say, hey, I'm running late. I've got some late meetings. And then just say, can we push it back a half hour or an hour or 45 minutes? Does that work for you? And see what they say. It's good because that can help them confirm the date and remind them to be there. But what's bad about that is that, like in this case, even though he got stood up, he found out what she was all about. He found out that she was flaky and unreliable. And on top of that, you'll see when I go through the text exchanges, she makes all these excuses up, and then she turns around and blames it on him, saying he didn't confirm the date. So what does that mean? It means that she probably got yelled at a lot by her parents and always told that she was wrong. And so she can't accept any responsibility for making mistakes. And so you can imagine you get into an argument with a woman like this about whatever happens to be, and she's never going to admit that she was wrong. She's going to defend herself and just react the way she learned to react in childhood to you, just like she did to her parents. Hey, it's not my fault, and let me explain to you why. And then flip it around and try to make you feel like it was your fault. How are you going to work out differences with somebody that doesn't admit that they made a mistake? I mean, if it was Brad Pitt or somebody famous and very handsome, she wouldn't have done this to him. She did it because she really had a take it or leave it kind of attitude. She didn't really care one way or another. He was an option. He was an afterthought to her. And now he knows where even though he got stood up and he's mad about it, which, it's understandable, but if you would use the technique of saying, hey, the day of the date, texting her, hey, I'm running late, can we meet a half hour later? Does that work for you? Or does that still work for you? And then she can confirm and say yes. And so the likelihood that she doesn't stand you up or is on time is, so in other words, you're doing the best thing, but you don't really find out what her integrity is like. Because you want somebody who's like, hell yeah, I'd love to go on a date with you. And they're excited. They want to make a good impression. They're there on time. Maybe they're even early. And that's what you want. Like all my closest friends, my family, we make plans a week, 2 weeks in advance. It goes in the calendar. Or like for me, if it's somebody really close to me, whether it's family or friends, I'm excited to see them. I'm looking forward to that. If it's a date with a girl I really like, I remember that in my mind. I'm looking forward to that. I want to spend my time with people that really want to spend time with me. Not people are like, It's like, why waste your time? Life's way too short. So he continues on. He says, the night of, I arrive on time and message her that I'm here. She responds about 10 minutes later asking me to call her. Obviously not a good sign. She immediately starts apologizing and saying that she had to stay late at work and she could be at the bar in 35 to 45 minutes. Can you imagine a woman like this being responsible for picking up your children from school? Or if you asked her to pick up a birthday cake for your mother's birthday and everybody's coming over to your house, do you think she would remember to do it? He says, I told her I wasn't going to wait and maybe we could get together some other time. And then she tries to shift blame on me, saying that we hadn't spoken 3 days and she wasn't sure if we were still on because I never reached out to confirm. Would she do that to her parents? Would she do that to a famous, really super handsome celebrity that she really wanted to meet and spend time with? Would she do that with a high-profile client of the company that she works for that needs to be taken care of? Probably not. So it shows you her level of interest. And she doesn't really know him, even though they have a connection through his coworker and her roommate. It just shows she just doesn't care. She's just fucking rude. She's a feral human. She's a low-quality chick. She's selfish, a little narcissistic. And on top of that, tries to blame. The guy drove all the way there to meet her. He remembered. And she's like, oh, I'm busy with work. And when that sounds like bullshit, well, it's your fault, actually. That's what a narcissist does, is they turn it around and they make you the guilty one when they didn't show up. So again, she's trying to absolve herself from any personal responsibility, and it's obvious she learned that in childhood, probably because her parents were always yelling at her and complaining and telling her she did something wrong. So she never felt like she could do anything right. And so that's just her natural go-to. Oh, it wasn't my fault, it was your fault. He says, I told her if she was unsure we were still on, she could have reached out to me. That's what people who have high integrity do. Hey, we still on for tonight? If they don't know you that well, that's common. You don't just fucking not make plans with somebody and then not show up. That's just rude. You do that at work, you get fired. If it was somebody working for me and I had a really important client and then they just fucking blow it off and go, oh, I got busy, I got tied up. Oh, you didn't call and confirm? But you're fucking fired. I don't hire people like that. I don't work with people like that. I don't tolerate bullshit like that. And you shouldn't either. He says she messaged me afterwards and I stood my ground, which she didn't take very well. I've read the book 3 times and I'm on my 4th round. Was this not a definite date? Okay, so now we're going to go through the text exchange. So she says, I can meet you there. This is when they're making plans. Is it close by? And he says RVC, which I don't know what that is or where that is. And she says, okay, Tuesday? And he says, yeah, meet me at Croxley's at 7. Get ready to have a great time. And she puts a little heart on it. In other words, she loves it. Her little emoji. And then she replies, okay, sounds good. Can't wait. LOL. He says, looking forward to it too. See you there. And she put a heart on both of those. So she loved both of those. Sounds like a definite confirmation. And so here's his text when he arrives. He says, I'm here. And she says, call me. And then she says, I feel really bad. I'm really sorry. I honestly lost track of time. Work got chaotic. It's like, this is such bullshit. Women use, it doesn't matter, because I talk to guys all over the world and they use the same fucking excuses. It's all BS. Remember, the longer the excuse, the bigger the lie. But also, I haven't heard from you since Friday. Like I said, I'm almost home now. If you want to give me 15 minutes. And he texts back. He says, my free time is limited. We made definite plans. I am a man of my word. I'm not sitting around in my car for an hour. Not cool. And he says, I'm home already. If you want to come hang out at my place, I'm down for that. I'm not coming back out to Long Island. And she said, it's cool. You could have said that on the phone, but you rudely hung up on me without saying much. I generally felt bad and was rushing home to meet you, but you're right. We shouldn't hang out if this is how it's already going. So she's like, yeah, she apologized, but her apology is BS. These are the kind of people, me personally, I would not want to deal with somebody like this. So if you look at it, she's probably like this with a lot of her friends. She's probably like this at work. If she was working for me, I would have fired the bitch a long time ago. I wouldn't put up with people like this in my life, because you put up with people like this, then they refer friends to you or people they know, and those people tend to be just like that. I mean, in my career in real estate and construction industry, I hired and fired hundreds of people. And you got a small percentage of people that would work out, and then majority of them were just average people, unreliable. They're constantly calling in sick. They don't work out. They don't take care of themselves. They always got excuses. It's never their fault. It's always somebody else's. Unfortunately, in the dating world and just life in general, you have to deal with people like this. You have to weed through these low quality people. She says, sorry again for wasting your limited time. He says, not much to say when you get stood up. It is what it is. Later. So other than the fact that he didn't really go into what he said in the phone, but the impression she got was that he was butthurt and hung up. But I can understand. The important thing to notice about this is that, like, no accountable. Yeah, she apologized, but it's like people throw apologies around these days, and it's like that doesn't mean shit. especially when they keep making the same mistakes. And so she's just used to treating people like dirt and getting away with it. She's a flake. It's like, I wouldn't want anything to do with people like this. They're just not worth your time. And so, yeah, it's upsetting that you get stood up, but now you know. Now you know this is, I would tell your buddy, I was like, hey, dude, I appreciate you setting me up, but that girl's a fucking flake, man. It's like, I want high character, high integrity. If you're going to set me up with somebody that's high character, high integrity. This girl's a total flake. We made a date 3 days before. She confirmed it. We were supposed to definitely be there. I show up. I remember it. And she's like, oh, work is chaotic. And then she turns around and tries to blame me. It's like, she's a fucking loser. I don't want anything to do with that girl. I don't want anything to do with anybody that's like that. So, but, I figure that's a good email so you can see what happens. Again, because think about it from this perspective. Say you had have texted her on the day of the date, 30 minutes, a couple hours before, saying, hey, I'm going to be running late. Can we push it back? Does that work for you? And she says yes. How many dates do you have to go out on, and how much money do you have to spend on her before you find out she's a total flake? Here, yeah, she stood you up, but now you know right away she's totally disqualified and you'll never see or speak to her again. But had you've gone out on 3 or 4 or 5 dates and then you start getting emotionally invested, and then like the video that I did yesterday where I talked about the guy whose girlfriend of a year was like 2 hours late for their Valentine's Day date. And he'd been putting up with that for a whole year, which he shouldn't have. He shouldn't have been dating that woman for the whole year. He should have found out right away how flaky she was and then ditched her instead of having a flaky girlfriend for a year. So, yeah, he's upset that he got stood up, but to me, it's nice to know right away. You didn't have to spend any money on her other than you spent some gas money. Maybe you had some tolls along the way, and you're out your time. But other than that, nothing else. You don't have to risk slipping one past the goalie, the condom breaking, getting a disease potentially. I mean, I always look at the upside in everything in life. And so this girl did you a favor. You follow what was in the book, and yeah, you got stood up, but now you know. You don't ever have to spend a moment with a chick like this because she's low quality and she's not worth your time. Let some other flaky, low quality dude end up with her. I personally wouldn't waste my time at all. And so if you haven't read 3% Man or Mastering Yourself, you can read them both for free at understandrelationships.com. All you got to do is subscribe to the email newsletter. If you like these sweet mugs, you can get them on Teespring, the Coach Corey Wayne store, to remind yourself. It might not be suitable for work. Obviously, in my office, the way I work, we use the F-bombs liberally. So people don't like it. Who cares? And if you'd like to talk to me, maybe you got a personal or professional issue you'd like to get my help with, go to understandrelationships.com, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and book a coaching session with yours truly. Until next time, I will talk to you soon.